Hi, my name is Jennifer Luarca, and this workshop is going to focus on having success in lectures that are recorded, or what we may call asynchronous lectures. So let's begin. We're going to cover getting set up to view, making sure that your environment is productive for viewing, strategies for during lecture, including note-taking, and then what to do after viewing to make sure that you're still running through that learning cycle and processing information effectively. So first, asynchronous lecture. This is an academic term or a fancy way to say that lectures will be pre-recorded. When you are told that you will have an asynchronous lecture, that means you will not be meeting as a class, but rather your professor or lecturer will be posting the video for the lecture, most likely to Beachboard or another designated space, and that you will need to watch it prior to your next meeting if you are meeting live after that asynchronous lecture. This is likely all stated in the syllabus or on Beachboard, and so it does require you as a student to make sure that you're keeping up with all the information that's coming out regarding how you're going to be receiving information for your class. You may still have occasional live meetings even though you're having asynchronous lectures. Again, this will most likely be indicated on your syllabus or through notification on Beachboard. So make sure that you turn on your notifications or you're checking your Beachboard news regularly. Office hours, in the instance of an asynchronous lecture, office hours are going to be so crucial. This is usually the only time that you're going to have to interact live with your professor, ask questions, or practice material. So really take advantage of office hours if you are in an asynchronous class. So, getting started. There's a lot to do to make sure that you're set up and prepared to learn well during your asynchronous lecture or your recorded lecture. We'll want to make sure that the video is available. If you log on and it's not there when the instructor said that it would be there, you'll want to follow up with the instructor. Usually an email is just enough to get them to post the lecture if it's not already ready. We'll want to make sure and check our device. If you don't see the video up, that may be because the instructor just recently uploaded it. So doing a quick refresh of your browser or even logging in and logging back out of Beachboard or vice versa, logging out and logging back into Beachboard might help you then see the video. If it's just you've tried everything you can, shut down your computer, restarted, logged in and logged out, refreshed your screen, and you still don't see the video, then you'll want to shoot an email off to the professor saying, hey, I logged in. If you can, take a screenshot of the message you're receiving so that they know you gave it your best effort and you're waiting for more information. Then you're just going to wait and see to perhaps the instructor did something wrong uploading the video. Perhaps it wasn't available yet. You're just going to need to wait and see what happens after that. Now, in terms of getting situated to be able to view the videos and stay on some sort of schedule, it's really important that you set yourself up with a regular viewing schedule. The challenge with asynchronous or recorded lectures is often that students tend to procrastinate watching the lectures because nobody is there making you attend. So time management, especially in regards to asynchronous lectures, is going to be critical to your success in the class. What we want to do in regards to time management is develop a set viewing schedule. Getting a routine when it comes to learning and receiving information is really important to the brain's processing of that information and to creating long-term memories regarding what you're learning. It's recommended that you stick with your class schedule if possible. You already have time set aside for the class during those hours. It's already built in. So if you can, you want to do your viewings on a regular basis following that class schedule as best you can. This will complement the other classes you're in and just make sure that you can get into that routine. If you can't use that regularly scheduled time for some reason, we'll want to designate equivalent meeting times 2 times a week, preferably with at least 1 day between viewings. This way, if you have a bad day and you can't watch everything at once, then you have another day to do catch up. But also we know that spacing information out over the week allows your brain to process and think about the information multiple times throughout the week. So here's a sample schedule. So as you see, we have biology Monday, Wednesday. We may have our calculus Tuesday, Thursday, and then we have some other study times around it. So spreading out your viewing and spreading out your study can really, really help in terms of staying on top of assignments, keeping track of information, and ultimately learning the content you're responsible to learn. Now, when it comes to viewing, you still want to set boundaries, really clear boundaries regarding your time with the class. It is also very likely that because you're not attending a live Zoom session, you may put off the coursework, or you may be more likely to be interrupted or distracted during asynchronous lectures, and that can really hinder your ability to learn in the class. So we want to make sure that we're creating boundaries, setting up that schedule, and sharing that schedule with our housemates so that we have time with the content that is distraction-free if possible. So one thing we want to do is, once you set up your study schedule, you'll want to share that with your housemates. This can help to just let them know, hey, I'm busy during these times. If you need me, write me a note or whatever that might be. And it can also just help them not interrupt you, right? They'll see, oh, she's busy, I'll try her again later. We want to make sure also, when we're talking about boundaries, that we're setting up boundaries with our physical space, our environment that we're in, so that when possible, we're sitting upright to watch the lectures. We have a clean space, a tabletop, or a hard surface to write on, that we have our learning tools available, pens, paper, the book, our device. We want to be taking notes, if possible, on paper so that our device doesn't get cluttered. We'll talk about that more in a second. And then we want to make sure that we're prepared with snacks and water. Anything that would be a distraction for you during lecture, we want to have available so that we're not likely to get up, pause, and go get a glass of water if we're thirsty, or a snack if we're hungry, right? We want to have that all in our learning space so that we can just sit and pay attention. Now, when we're viewing, if possible, we want to try to watch the whole lecture as if, or watch the whole recording as if we were in lecture. Now, this might not be possible. It might be a really long class, or you may have focus issues, kind of watching things for a long time. So if you do need to take a break, it's recommended you pause when the instructor comes to the end of a thought or an idea. Pause it, take your break, and then resume. Before resuming, I would recommend taking a quick glance at your notes and kind of jogging your memory from where the instructor left off. When possible, we want to take paper notes as well. If you are using the device to take notes and watch the video, it can get pretty distracting going back and forth between windows. It can also get really cluttered in your visual space, which hinders your ability to process information efficiently. So when possible, we want to use our device to watch the video and write notes on paper or another device. And then we can kind of go back after class and type up our notes or integrate them into whatever system we're used to using. And again, this just minimizes the distraction that's available to us on screens and the virtual clutter, or even the potential for slowing down our operating systems by flipping back and forth between a bunch of tabs. All right, and so as promised, we're going to talk a little bit about note-taking for clarity and purpose. So remember that notes are always there to help us learn, right? To help us think about the content and to add any additional information that isn't available in the text or elsewhere. So first and foremost, again, we want to take notes on paper if possible. This helps to free up the screen for lecture only. We want to write down items that are elaborated on, things that the instructor spends a lot of time with, tend to be important or potential test questions. So if they spend 30 minutes talking about a certain topic, we want to write that topic down. Again, if they repeat something, we want to write that down as well. And we want to always try to grab examples the professor uses to illustrate those concepts. So I would say it's more important to write down the professor's examples than to write down a definition. We can always Google a definition later, look it up in the textbook, may even be available on the PowerPoint, but we cannot always recreate that instructor's example of the concept. And examples oftentimes give us insight as to how we will be asked about these concepts during the exam. So get the examples down if you can. After class, we would want to take a look at our notes within about 24 hours, make sure that the information's clear, Make sure that it will be useful to us later. I always tell students, think about your future self in 2 or 3 weeks. Will your notes make sense? Excuse me. If not, we may need to add information, or we may need to contextualize the content to make sure that it's clear and that we are able to understand what's being written down on that paper. And then I would recommend, for the purposes of virtual learning, that we always put on the top of the page for our notes for that day key concepts or terms that are covered, almost like a little glossary, so that as we're flipping through our notes, if we're looking for a key term, an important date, or a key concept, that's right there at the top of the page, and we're able to track that information down a lot more efficiently. So again, just writing on the top in the margin somewhere these key topics for today and writing those down up at the top would be really important. Now, when we're watching our lecture, we want to watch with intention. So if possible, we want to review course material, read, or at least skim the book, and take a look at PowerPoints that are available before class starts. This will just help us to remember information and start to process information more efficiently. We always also want to take a look at what assignments are coming down the line, so that we have in the back of our head how the information that is covered that day might relate to an assignment that we have. Okay, so that's just helping us with the efficiency and starting to think about what we're learning and why we're learning it and how we might be responsible for it later. And then again, we want to just let everybody know in our household that, hey, I'm in class right now, so if you need me, write me a note, right? Send me a text, something like that. And then during class, we want to minimize any other windows or notifications that might be coming through, so you can just I would recommend getting to class about 10 minutes early, logging on, disabling notifications, getting your virtual space set up, and then you're good to go. Now, after class, I would like you to spend about 5 or 10 minutes after lecture to plan for study and to clarify your notes. So as I said earlier, we want to make sure that our notes are useful to us later, and the best time to do that is to take a look at them just after we heard lecture to make sure we can add in any missing details, add context if necessary, and highlight key concepts, maybe even put those key terms up at the top of the page. We would also want to write down questions or make a little notation, a star or a circle, next to concepts that we're not really completely sure about, so that when we study later, we know where to start. We start with those difficult concepts. And also we know we can go to office hours, we can go to tutoring, we can reach out to a peer in the class or a friend that might be able to help us start to learn that certain concept better, right? So that organizational aspect, it's really quick, like I said, 5 or 10 minutes, but it can really maximize your study time later. You get a little organized right after class. Now, in terms of visiting office hours, as I said, for asynchronous or recorded lectures, we're not really seeing the instructor often. So office hours is going to be our primary chance for face-to-face or voice-to-voice interaction with our professor. So we would want to make sure we're visiting office hours. I recommend at least once a month checking in with them, asking questions, maybe just clarifying a concept, having them, getting their opinion on an assignment, right? Anything, just check in. Touch base with your professor at least once a month. And in terms of those office hour visits, we would want to come with specific questions. So being very, very clear and specific about the part of the concept we're unsure about. So here's an example on the screen. In lecture today, I understood X or this, but I'm having trouble with Y or this part. Can you give me a different example? So you see here, it's not just saying, I don't understand photosynthesis, right? It's not saying, give me all the material all over again. What we're saying is, you know what, for photosynthesis, I understand the light-dependent reaction, but I'm still a little unclear on the light-independent reaction. Can you go over that or give me an example to help me understand it better? Right? So now we're funneling, we're guiding the instructor towards the part that we're unsure about. This helps maximize time in office hours, right? It helps us narrow it down, be very specific, and it just helps direct the instructor a little bit better. With the little time they have available in office hours, we want to maximize that time as much as we can. And then if they give you another example and you still don't understand, you're going to need to let them know that. If somebody says, do you get it? And if you don't want to say no, or you don't want to say yes and move on. You want to say, I'm still not clear. Let me try to explain it to you. Maybe you can find where I'm lacking knowledge, right? Oftentimes, to see if we understand something, we should try to teach it to somebody else, because that shows us very clearly where the breakdown is. So that's always an option also when you're talking to an instructor. If you're not following their explanation, you can just say, you know what, let me try to explain it to you and we'll see if I can do it, right? And that gives you a chance to flip it and also guide the instructor as to what you're struggling with the most. Now, in terms of studying with your groups in asynchronous lectures, this can be, difficult because you're not seeing these faces during class regularly. You're having to step outside your comfort zone and connect with them, but it can still be a really critical part of learning and a very important way for you to process and practice learning the information. So what I would recommend is reaching out to peers in your class and asking them. You can use the class list option on Beachboard is probably the easiest way to do this. You can email everybody and say, hey, anybody want to set up a study group? And you can set up a day and time that works for you, and during that time you can hop on Zoom or Google Teams or even social media platforms and practice reteaching concepts to each other, ask questions of one another. You can predict exam questions. It would be a very nice space for you to practice live what you're learning recorded, right? Because you don't have the opportunity to ask questions in class like you would in a recorded lecture. So this can allow you that time to work with your peers, make those connections, and practice learning. That's it for me, super quick. Hopefully you got some helpful tips. Again, my name is Jennifer Luarca, and I'm an academic coach at the Learning Center. You can schedule a free session with an academic coach by visiting our center's webpage. You can Google academic coaching at the Learning Center at CSULB, and there it will guide you to self-schedule through Beach Connect. Instructions are available there, and there are a lot of other good resources if you're looking for more video tutorials or some handouts that might help you and might help direct your learning. Thank you so much, and best of luck to you.